Hi Ninglings, it's Friday. I started this vlog and then I noticed my leg was bleeding, so then I had to get up and put a band-aid on my leg, but anyway, all is fine. Apparently vlogging is dangerous because I just spontaneously started bleeding, so that's something I didn't know before. Speaking of blood, Pat made a video on Monday talking about violence in movies, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I would say that the American media has this big focus on violence. That's as a whole, not just movies and not just TV shows. I mean, like, the media, the news is very violence focused. My mom always refers to television news programs as scary news because they start off in the first 10 minutes with somebody's been killed, somebody's been robbed, somebody's been, I don't know, another violent crime. That's what they start with. That's what they do to get your attention. That's what they assume that you want to hear. So we've been conditioned to want to hear that. We want to get to this kind of fear, this feeling of it's important because it's scary or it's dangerous. It's a cycle because then we're conditioned to want that, so then the TV stations give it to us and then we want it more. I don't know if you guys actually know this, but 2 summers ago I spent 3 weeks on a homestay in Spain. My family really liked watching TV, and most of the time we watched American shows that were dubbed into Spanish, mostly like House and Miami Medical, which I didn't know was a thing until I went to Spain. But even though we didn't watch them, there were lots of previews for shows that were going to be on that were actually made in Spain or made in a Spanish-speaking country. One thing that I noticed about these shows is they had a lot of sex in the previews. So I asked my host parents, I was like, are all the shows on TV in Spain sexy? Like, is that just normal? My host mom explained to me was that in America, we see a lot more of violence on TV and in movies, whereas in Spain and in Europe, I think in general, they see a lot more sex. And that's just kind of what our cultures are used to and what we find more acceptable, I suppose. For Americans on the whole, people are more willing to talk about violence and guns, for instance, as opposed to talking about sexual behavior. And in Europe, it's the opposite. They're more interested in talking about sexual behavior, and that's more of like an everyday thing. And they don't really talk about violence because there's less of it, but also because it's not in their culture. I know the United States has a higher rate of gun ownership, and I don't know whether that's because we are a more violent society or whether that's just because we think that that's our right. But I think we might also be one of the countries with the highest rate of teen pregnancy. I just looked it up. Apparently the United States has both the highest number of teenage births and the highest rate of teenage births. So both the number and accounted for with the population. We are the highest. And this makes me wonder something in terms of what we ask for from our media. If we make sex this totally taboo subject, I feel like that might have something to do with the fact that now we have a really high teenage birth rate. I don't know. I could be coming from nowhere or I could be coming from somewhere. It's hard to know sometimes. See the correlation I'm making? Like, we like violence, but we're also really violent and we don't talk about sex, and then there's a lot of like undermining of sexual health, and then it's a problem because of teenage pregnancy. But in Europe, they have less violence and safer sex because they see less violence and they see more sex. I don't know if it's related. I don't know, I just thought it was worth looking at, and I thought it was interesting the difference between Spain and the United States in terms of what they see on television in terms of violence. And I think Pat's right that we should be considerate of what our violence in the media and on TV and in movies is doing to us as a culture and as a society and as people. I will see you next week, and Zach, I will see you tomorrow.